What are some of the worst examples of the "we've always done it that way" mindset? Story 1. Banks do not transfer money on weekends. This is because in the old days, without the internet and such, the money transfers were done by hand. But now it's done by computers. The only reason it still happens is that one of the banks has the money and gets interest over it on those weekends. I'm an American living in South Korea, and when I first moved here, I found I could deposit money in an ATM any day of the week, and it was immediately available in my bank account. Same goes for people transferring money to you from their account. I was floored. It's refreshing to hear that there are other countries like South Korea that are ahead of the curve when it comes to banking technology. The fact that you can deposit money in an ATM any day of the week and have it immediately available in your bank account is amazing. It's like we're finally catching up to where we should have been all along. Story 2. I work with contracts. I have a coworker who refuses to review them on her screen, so she prints out several 20 to 50-page documents per day, reviews them manually, and tosses them in the recycle bin. She probably goes through 1 to 2 reams of paper a week. I tried to explain to her that you can review them without printing them off, but that's the way I have always done it. So for all that work that you do every day to try and recycle and be responsible, she's out here making enough waste to make up for it. Story 3. Maybe not the worst, but I think this story is worth sharing. Banana farmer Doug takes his future son-in-law and my friend Jim out to pick bananas. Bananas are grown on steep slopes around here, with roads winding back and forth up the hill. So Doug parks the truck at the top, walks down the hill, and starts cutting branches that weigh 25 to 45 kilograms, and then hauls them back up the hill to the truck. Jim takes one look at this setup and says, "Why don't we park the truck at the bottom of the hill and start picking there, so we can carry the bananas down the hill instead of up? Then we can move the truck up the rows as we go." "Because we always do it this way," is the reply. So Jim says, "Humor me, let's try it my way just for a day." Doug reluctantly agrees. End of the day, bananas are picked and they're back at the house enjoying a cold beer. Doug says, "You know what, Jim? Your way was a lot easier." Story 4. My boss will insist we do things his way because that's the way he did it before he had any employees, and that's what worked for him. However, we keep having to lull him into letting us do things our way because his way was just slowing down and hurting our business. He's seen the progress we've made, mostly the money, but also customer satisfaction, and when he's not there on Saturday, we're going to get more work done and money in a day than this guy will do in a week because of how efficient we are. We work on cars. You put empty boxes here in the empty box area. When the area fills up, you move all the boxes over to the box flattening area on the other side of the warehouse and flatten them there. After that, you bring the flattened boxes back across the warehouse and leave them in the flattened box area next to the empty box area. Why don't we just flatten the boxes here so we aren't spending time hauling things across the warehouse several times? What? Why would you do that when we have a designated box flattening area? Why not designate a new area that's closer? Because the area is over there. If I see you flattening boxes out of the box flattening area, you're fired. The classic case of the my way or the highway boss. I mean, who doesn't love being micromanaged and forced to do things in a way that's clearly outdated and inefficient? It's like this boss is stuck in a time warp, unable to see that his way of doing things just isn't working anymore. All in all, I think it's time for this boss to step back and let his employees do their jobs in a way that's more efficient and productive. Story 5. The college lecture format. Most professors teach that way because it's how they learned, and it was good enough for them. But there's a surprising amount of research going on about how to actually effectively teach, and people who do such research, including Nobel laureate in physics Carl Wyman, have compared that teaching method to bloodletting as a medical treatment. That is to say, any benefit from it is purely coincidental. I agree, but I'll say this. Alternative methods such as small group work require a level of investment from students that just doesn't occur in some classes. For example, some of my grad school friends teach college algebra. Yes, algebra in college. A lot of those students aren't invested in learning math. They just want to take care of their math credits and get out. Unsurprisingly, the friend that does more lectures has had the best grade averages. Here we go, the classic college lecture format. It's like a rite of passage for every college student. I mean, just because something worked for one professor doesn't mean it's going to work for every student. There's actual research out there showing that the lecture format isn't the most effective way of teaching. So it's not just a matter of trying to be trendy or hip, it's about trying to actually help students learn. Story 6. I have 2 coworkers, our admins, who print an email and scan it back to themselves as a PDF. Yes, I've shown them how to save the original digital file as a PDF. Yes, they keep printing and scanning. One of my coworkers says she's not a computer person. Love that. The technology that all modern businesses run off, and you don't need it. You're very useful. I hate that mindset. It's basically saying, I'm bad at this large aspect of my job, so now it's everyone else's responsibility to do it for me. I have one coworker who is unable to call into conference calls on her own. This is not a computer Skype call. She literally just can't figure out how to dial a phone number. And somehow this is still acceptable behavior. Someone has to come in and call the number for her every time. Story 7. I'm a pediatric resident working with archaic old attending doctors who enforce decisions based on how it was back in the day, rather than data-supported and evidence-based medicine. I can't stand working with these sort of people. Story 8. Job I was in would handwrite patient notes, type them up, then print them again, only to file them. I suggested typing them from the get-go, as everyone had laptops anyway, and then attaching the digital notes to the patient profile on our global drive. Once all existing notes were archived, we went from having 10 on-site filing cabinets to half a filing cabinet. People are technophobic. Story 9. I just started a new job at a small clinic, and absolutely everything they have is analog. Their contacts are in a Rolodex, and nowhere else. Old files take up an entire garage behind the clinic. The schedule, handled by individual clinicians, even though most patients see at least 2 therapists when they come, has to be handwritten week by week. All notes are handwritten. It's driving me crazy. Story 10. In several academic fields, there's a culture of older, more experienced people acting crappy towards their younger subordinates, and the younger people just having to take it because the older people have all the power. Eventually, the younger people grow older and end up being crappy to their subordinates because in their view, they've served their time. This will never end until the people with the power stop being jerks. Yes, minor example, was at a conference recently, and during my talk, the old eccentric interrupted me a few minutes in about something not about my research, really rudely. I was taken aback, as were the younger folks present, but it was amazing how many old guys just shrugged and said, I've known him 20 years, and that's just how he is. Old dude did apologize for how I took it, which I always take as a non-apology, but it was pretty absurd that I was not supposed to be angry that an old man I didn't know insulted me in front of the entire conference for no reason. Oh, how delightful. Another example of the serve their time mentality in academia. Because nothing says I'm a seasoned expert in my field like being a total jerk to your younger subordinates. It's time for the people in power to start treating their subordinates with respect and kindness, instead of using their position to act like entitled jerks. And maybe someday we'll live in a world where someone's age and experience doesn't give them a free pass to be a total jerk to others. Story 11. I work in a restaurant, and one night I went to clean the soda nozzle on the fountain. I removed the one for lemonade and water, and it broke the abuser's mind. He said, "We leave that one overnight. I know, I'm just going to give it a little scrub and hook it back up, in case someone wants water." We have a porter who cleans the place. The busser thought I was trying to deny this guy a glass of water. It can be reattached. I'm going to clean it and reattach it within 90 seconds. It just needs to be cleaned every once in a while. He looked like his heart was broken. Restaurant workers are extremely susceptible to microcosmal thinking. Felt bad for the guy. Messed his stuff up. Story 12. Joining a work environment and making suggestions to coworkers who have been doing the job for over 40 years. Some appreciate learning of an alternative way of working, while some get all huffed up about learning something new that would increase their productivity. Next time, don't ask me how I do my work faster then. Story 13. Boy, girl seating. I worked in a preschool, and this older woman constantly insists on children sitting this way. Even when she walks into the middle of a lunch that she's not catering, she'll make the kids stop eating, stand up, and move them around just so they're sitting boy-girl. I honestly can't see any reason to use it. Story 14. The rules for billiards on a given day seem to depend on who I'm playing because that's the way they've always played. Monopoly is the same. Story 15. Dressing all your soldiers in bright red trousers, lining them up in parade ground formation, and marching toward the enemy lines. Here's looking at you, France in 1914. Or choosing commanders based on birth over skill. Looking at you, Austria-Hungary. To be fair, it's hard to be a commander if you haven't gone through birth. Story 16. The most profound example of this in my life was when a coworker received a food order via text from another coworker, but I was the one ordering the food. So I asked her to copy and paste it to me, but instead she calls me while I'm driving and gives me 3 people's orders. I ask her to copy and paste a text or forward it to me because I won't remember all the orders, but she insists that I write it down while I'm driving, which I did not do. She still to this day refuses to learn how to copy and paste or forward texts. Okay, sure, we've all had our moments of tech confusion, but this coworker just needs a little extra help getting up to speed. Then again, she refuses to learn how to copy and paste or forward texts. That's just plain stubborn. Why make things harder for yourself when there's a simple solution right in front of you? Story 17. There is no reason for a cashiers should always stand rule. It's based on outdated tradition and not much in the way of practicality. Story 18. My most recent job was as a developer at a small software company. When I started, there was no source control. The programmers would sit behind a computer and compare their code line by line with a file compare tool. When I brought up that there was a tool to fix this, they didn't trust it. We don't want to change how we do things just because it's easier. Story 19. When I worked at the camp front desk, we had a really bad system. It was sort of okay for checking people in, but for everything else, it was just horrible. Even checkouts were a chore to do. Anyway, I thought that I needed to search for the parcel number, let's say 202. I had to scroll down to 202, right-click on it, choose Check-in Guests, then press F4 Tab, and then I could check people in. I soon figured out that I can type the parcel number by keyboard, and by pressing Enter, it jumps straight to check in the page. No F4s or tabs. So that's what I did, and told everyone of the new ways. Until that one guy said that screws up the process, and by doing it my way, it can mess with everything else, and blamed me for my mistake that was made by him at the checkout. Like I said, even checking out was a chore, and you had to be really careful when doing it, otherwise you could mess things up, which he did. He told the boss about it, and we had to go back to left-clicking and whatnot. Nobody did it, of course, because it was time-consuming. Oh, I've been there. You find a more efficient way to do something, but then someone else comes along and tells you that you're doing it wrong. Let's be real. If there's a faster, more efficient way to do something, why wouldn't you do it? It just doesn't make sense to waste time and energy doing things the old-fashioned way when there's a better option available. Story 20. Every year, our town throws someone named Ted into a lake. What town and why? And is it the same Ted every year? Or do they randomly pick another Ted every year? How many Teds does your town have? It's because of an old tradition of dumping tea into the lake in celebration of the Boston Tea Party. But the original document was handwritten and tea kind of looks like Ted. So it's a tradition to find the nearest Ted and throw him in. It's silly, but gives our town its charm. It's funny to see so many people from my hometown chime in. What's up, Pawnee? Story 21. Don't work too hard or fast. You'll make us look bad. If I finish my work, then let me chill. If there's more work, then give me that stuff. I'm not turning a screw for 10 minutes. If you manage to process 500 units in one day, management will expect you to do that every day, forever. And God forbid you hit 550 units, management is an unrelenting evil monster. Story 22. Daylight savings time causes a huge uptick in accidents every spring and serves no real function for tons of the population in the US anymore. But we still do it. Daylight savings is my bane, cause even though I'm in a zone where it isn't altered, everyone, read the 80% of the retirees and the dug-in family traditions, changes it. Then blame me when I'm late for the 2 p.m. meeting, cause I showed up at the correct time according to my phone's updated time. I feel your pain. Daylight savings time is the worst. Sure, it might have made sense at some point in history, but now it just feels like an unnecessary hassle. What's even worse is when you're in a zone where it isn't altered, but everyone around you changes it anyway.
Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.